Greetings and thank you for joining me for this review of Sleeping Murder by Agatha Christie. I've got a nice Fontana cover. I haven't actually seen that artwork before. I've read a previous one in the past, not this one. Allegedly Miss Marple's last case. I don't know if that's true. I kind of hope not. I like Miss Marple. I think she's better than Hercule Poirot in any case. So it's a rather unusual book, and it's from, I think it was published in 1967, and it's very much a variation on what people who haven't read a lot of Agatha Christie are going to be expecting from it. It starts with a young woman from New Zealand, which I like. I'm not from New Zealand, I'm Australian, but New Zealand are our brothers, our relatives, our neighbours. And that was interesting in itself because 1970s, and you're starting with a young woman who's just arrived from New Zealand. She's married, but her husband will be following her shortly. In the meantime, she's going to visit England for the first time because she's never been here before. And the point was made there, which I think is something too many people these days forget, but in the 70s, essentially, it was a commonwealth in a way that it isn't anymore. If you were from New Zealand or Australia or Canada, I believe as well, you were essentially an English. You were a British citizen, and people in New Zealand still referred to England as home. Now, Gwenda has met an actual Englishman, and they're married, and she travels around. She finds a house that she really likes, and she buys it. It seems to make buying houses incredibly simple by comparison to what we see today, but there you go. It's a house that she sees. As soon as she sees it, she loves it. She feels at home. She feels this is her place where she wants to be. And it sounds like a gorgeous house. It's got 5 or 6 bedrooms, which is just enough, apparently. You can see the ocean from the main bedroom. And it's got a nice garden, it's got an adequate kitchen garden. So this is a very dated feeling book in those regards, but it's surprisingly contemporary in the way it's written. Anyway, Gwen settles down to do the house up the way she wants, get the modifications done. She wants a couple of extra bathrooms. Some of those adequate 5 or 6 bedrooms, I guess, become bathrooms. The wallpaper doesn't appeal to her, so she changes it. She gets rid of the old furniture. She brings in new furniture. And then strange things start to happen. She's in the living room one day. Lunch is called. She goes to a wall to go through to the dining room before realizing there's no actual wall there. And there's no door in the wall there. She's done that a few times. She goes out into the corridor and she talks to the builders about putting a door there. When they come to investigate it, they find that there was a door there in the past, so it'll be really easy to do, and she's happy about that. Then she is looking out at the terrace. She wants to uproot all this shrubbery that blocks the view of the ocean from the ground floor, and she wants new stairs put down to the garden in what seems to her a logical place instead of where they are. When the gardener starts digging, he goes, "Oh, this will be easy. This is where there were stairs in the past. They must have changed it." And she's going, "Well, that's a strange thing to change, and the new position isn't great." Small things of it like that keep happening. And they make her feel a bit eerie and odd. And in that regard, at this point in the book, it's got an almost Hitchcockian feeling, because Alfred Hitchcock famously said that all you need for horror is a likable person or persons that are isolated and bad things start happening. So at this point, it's actually quite an interesting feeling to the book, and not what people would probably necessarily expect from an Agatha Christie. The final clincher for Gwen is when she asks the builders to open up a door that has been painted shut for years and years and years. The previous night, she'd been lying in bed thinking what sort of wallpaper she wanted, and she wanted a very specific one: red poppies in little bunches interspersed with cornflowers, whatever the hell a cornflower is. I don't know. It sounds yellow, but apparently they're blue. Anyway, the builders open up this cupboard and she sees the wallpaper that had been there before it was painted shut, and it's exactly the one she was imagining. And it was too specific, too random for her not to have seen it before. Only she's never been in the house before, she's never been in England before. So she gets terribly, terribly worried. She's worried she's going psychic or something horrible, or maybe that the house is haunted, or maybe she's haunted. And since her husband hasn't yet arrived, what she does is she heads off to, I think, London, to stay with some people who've invited her. And they include her in this gay whirl of London, and they go to see plays, and this is where Miss Marple comes into the picture. So, Miss Marple isn't my favourite Agatha Christie investigator, but I like her far more than Hercule Poirot. I think the whole notion of her is great. I love the core hypothesis that Christie works with there, that a little old lady who's happy and nice and likes people, going around gossiping, can sort of wend out all the bits of information that people have without knowing that they know them, and put them together through her wide experience of human nature into a coherent picture. So she's one of my more favourite Agatha Christie investigators. Anyway, while Gwen's there, she's taken along to a play on page 23. There we go. So they're in this play, and Gwenda enjoyed it very much. And as it drew to a close, it came to the supreme moment of horror. The actor's voice came over the footlights, filled with the tragedy of a warped and perverted mentality. Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle, she died young. And Gwenda screams and runs out of the theatre. Because when she heard those words, she saw an image of the entrance to her house, where she's now living, though she's staying with friends. She's looking through the banisters, and there's a woman lying on the floor who's been strangled, and the person who's just said that word has monkey paws standing over her. So we've got a mystery, and that is the mystery that is investigated throughout the novel. I love the way that was set up. I think I first read Sleeping Murder back when I was a teenager, but I didn't own the book. And for years I tried to recapture enough of the memory of the book to find it again and read it. I knew it was an English thriller mystery type, but when I finally found it again, I was really happy. I'm happy to read it again. This is one of the Agatha Christie's that has stayed in my mind the best, though. So for me, reading this, there wasn't a lot of mystery. I may not have remembered it page by page, paragraph by paragraph, but I did remember the conclusion. I knew who did it throughout. So it's hard for me to estimate how someone who hasn't read it before is going to receive this book as you read it. Because what we have is Gwenda's husband, Giles, comes back from overseas, and they settle in the house. And they get all excited and youthful and puppyish and go, wow, there's a murder, there's a mystery associated with our house. We've got to go and find it out. And Miss Marple is concerned about that. The title, Sleeping Murder, comes from the fact that Miss Marple, as well as several other people, says to them, pardon me, let sleeping murder lie. So it's a murder that's happened, if it's a murder at all, it's happened 18 years ago. It wasn't picked up as a murder. Everyone believes that the person who they now think has been murdered had just left. So it's a very, very old murder. And from the start, Miss Marple and a few other people are concerned that if you start digging around, maybe the murder is still there. Because at the first, we get the feel through Giles and Gwenda that it's this really, really old thing that has happened. But really, Gwenda was, or Gwenny, as the people in the town remember her, was about 2 or 3, and there's still plenty of people around who could have been involved. And that is how Giles and Gwenda go around looking for all the clues and all the people who were involved, the old maid who worked there, the old people who knew them, all that sort of thing. And with Miss Marple as an assistant and a bit of a, I don't know, tutor, I suppose, helping them on. But in actual fact, we as readers follow Giles and Gwenda as they race around the countryside, interviewing people and finding out clues and facts. But Miss Marple is the one who comes up with the actual information by wandering around the village, chatting with people in stores, and generally doing what she does so well. Chirp. Say hello to the dinosaur. Hello, dinosaur. No, the dinosaur is not interested. And I've always liked that part of the Miss Marple mysteries. I like the way the villages are constructed. I like the way the society is represented. And we're talking about 1970s, or it could as easily be 1960s. We are heading towards vintage era here and barreling on to antique. So I enjoy those parts. Now, I'm not going to tell you who the murderer is, and I'm not really going to spoiler it at all, but I'm going to say it's a strangely contemporary sort of book. The style of writing has not aged really at all in many, many ways. And Agatha Christie does a few things that make it feel... I suspect she did them because it made them easy to read back in the day, but it also means that they read very, very much contemporary. For an example, on page 13, when Gwenda is redecorating her house, it talks about the furniture and the things about redecorating the house. The tiny 5 or 6 bedroom house. Anyway, it describes the furniture. The so-called easy chairs Gwenda had relegated to various bedrooms and had brought 2 large squashy wells of comfort for herself and Giles to stand each side of the fireplace. So I'm quite certain that whatever Agatha Christie thought was a squashy well of comfort is nothing that I would recognise as enjoyable, and my idea of a squashy well of comfort is probably not something Dame Agatha would have enjoyed. But by using that phraseology, she allows you, the reader, to put any squashy well of comfort you want there, which makes it feel contemporary, small things like that. Now, so despite that very contemporary feel to the actual writing and the way it is read, it has many things that should date it. It remains oddly undated, but it's got all these things that make it feel like you're reading historical fiction, which in fact you are. You're reading historical fiction that was written in history. So you've got the fact that Gwenda blushes whenever the nursery is mentioned. I don't know anyone who blushes. But it's a writing artifact from the 60s and 70s that worked. Maybe, did women blush in the 60s and 70s? Do women blush now? It's England, it's probably freezing cold. Maybe it's easy to blush if you're icy cold, but I didn't know anyone who blushed in Melbourne even. The question of blushing. Okay, the description of the house and the fact that they had the sorts of fortunes that would allow them to just buy a house somewhere and do whatever they like to it. Again, that's not contemporary. And yet Gwenda and Giles don't see themselves as being exorbitantly wealthy. They see them as average or middle class wealth, which is not in any way contemporary. The fact that you buy a house and you immediately have servants, it's just so quaint. When Gwenda arrives in England, she hires a car to see a little bit of England before deciding where she wants to settle. She doesn't just hire a car we like to find, she hires a car and someone to drive her around. In the 2020s, that's just kind of fun and naff. And there's some words that are out of use. Early on, Miss Marple uses a word that I'd never even seen before, which is always an exciting experience. I've lost it now. But you've got a whole heap of small things like that that make it read like historical fiction, but very, very contemporary historical fiction. And the characters are also often strangely contemporary, but then you have the old housemaid Lily, whose husband sounds like dated. I don't know, do people say "oh" in England? Is that a thing? So overall, It's a very satisfying book. I think it would probably be more satisfying for someone who had not read it before and did not know from the get-go who done it. I did know who done it. I still really enjoyed it for its writing and the general things that it does. I feel like a modern sophisticated reader is unlikely to be taken in by the really cute ways in which this book fools you into thinking that you know things that you don't actually know. All good mysteries do that. They lay down these red herrings that you accept as a reader. If it's dated in any way, I think it's probably dated in the tactics that Agatha Christie uses to build this story. Toward the end, you've got Giles and Gwenda who can't tell who might have done it. They're nearing the end of the story, we know, because they've only got this many pages to go, but they don't know who done it. I think for most modern readers, we're going to have a pretty strong notion of who done it, or the fact, or winnowing out the things that Giles and Gwenda concentrate on, but Miss Marple obviously isn't. So yes, a fun little historical mystery thriller from Agatha Christie, who is far more rounded and with a lot more variety in her writing than people are inclined to credit her with at times. Thank you very much for watching. The algorithm loves it if you like, comment and subscribe, but I like it if you comment. Tell me if you've read it, tell me if you haven't. Let's talk books, and remember to read good books, because that's the important part of BookTube, in my opinion.